The Great American Interchange was an important paleozoogeographic event in which land and freshwater fauna migrated from North America via Central America to South America and vice versa. As the volcanic Isthmus of Panama rose up from the sea floor and bridged the formerly separated continents, the migration peaked dramatically around 3 million years ago during the Piacenzian age. It resulted in the joining of the Neotropic and Arctic ecozones definitively to form the Americas. The interchange is visible from observation of both stratigraphy and nature. Its most dramatic effect is on the zoogeography of mammals, but it also gave an opportunity for reptiles, amphibians, arthropods, weak-flying or flightless birds, and even freshwater fish to migrate. The occurrence of the interchange was first discussed in 1876 by the father of biogeography, Alfred Russel Wallace. Wallace had spent 1848 to 1852 exploring and collecting specimens in the Amazon basin. Others who made significant contributions to understanding the event in the century that followed include Florentino Ameghino, W.D. Matthew W. B. Scott, Brian Patterson, George Gaylord Simpson, and S. David Webb. Analogous interchanges occurred earlier in the Cenozoic, when the formerly isolated land masses of India and Africa made contact with Eurasia c. 50 and 30 ma ago, respectively. South America's endemic fauna. After the late Mesozoic breakup of Gondwana, South America spent most of the Cenozoic era as an island continent whose splendid isolation allowed its fauna to evolve into many forms found nowhere else on Earth, most of which are now extinct. Its endemic mammals initially consisted primarily of metatherians, xenothrans, and a diverse group of native ungulates. Note ungulates, litoptans, astropodes, and pyrrhotheres. A few non-therian mammals, monotremes, gondwanatheres, and possibly dryalestids and multituberculates were also present in the Paleocene, while none of these diversified significantly and most lineages did not survive long. Forms like necrolists and Patagonia remained as recently as the Miocene. Marsupials appear to have traveled via Gondwanan land connections from South America through Antarctica to Australia in the late Cretaceous or early Tertiary. One living South American marsupial, the Monito del Monte, has been shown to be more closely related to Australian marsupials than to other South American marsupials. However, it is the most basal Australodelphian, meaning that this superorder arose in South America and then colonized Australia after the Monito del Monte split off. A 61-ma-old platypus-like monotreme fossil from Patagonia may represent an Australian immigrant. It appears that rhytites migrated by this route around the same time, more likely in the direction from South America towards Australia, New Zealand. Other taxa that may have dispersed by the same route are parrots, cheetah turtles, and myolaniid turtles. Marsupials present in South America included didelphimorphs and several other small groups. Larger predatory relatives of these also existed, like the boar hyenids and the saber-toothed Eikosmolus. Metatherians were the only South American mammals to specialize as carnivores. The relative inefficiency created openings for non-mammalian predators to play more prominent roles than usual. Sparacodonts shared the ecological niches for large predators with fearsome flightless terror birds, whose closest extant relatives are the sirenids. Through the skies over late Miocene South America soared the largest flying bird known, the Teratorn argentavis, with a wingspan of 6 meters or more, which may have subsisted in part on the leftovers of Eikosmolus kills. Terrestrials mammals Iphodonts-abetted crocodilians were also present at least through the Middle Miocene and maybe to the Miocene-Pliocene boundary. Some of South America's aquatic crocodilians, such as Gryposuchus, Morisuchus and Purosaurus, reached monstrous sizes, with lengths up to 12 meters. They shared the habitat with one of the largest turtles of all time, the 3.3 meters Stupendomys. Xenothrons are a curious group of mammals that developed morphological adaptations for specialized diets very early in their history. In addition to those extant today, a great diversity of larger types were present, including pampedes, the ankylosaur-like glyptodonts, various ground sloths, some of which reached the size of elephants, and even semi-aquatic to aquatic marine sloths. The notungulates and litoptons had many strange forms, like Macrocenia, a camel-like litoptian with a small proboscis. They also produced a number of familiar-looking body types that represent examples of parallel or convergent evolution. One Tototherium had legs like those of a horse. Pachyrucos resembled a rabbit. Homalodotherium was a semi-bipedal clawed browser like a chalicothere, and horned Trigodon looked like a rhino. Both groups started evolving in the lower Paleocene, possibly from condylarth stock, diversified, dwindled before the Great Interchange, and went extinct at the end of the Pleistocene. The Pyrotheres and Astronpotheres were also strange but were less diverse and disappeared earlier, well before the interchange. The North American fauna was a typical Boreoeutherian one. Island hopping, wave disperses. The invasions of South America started about 40 million years ago when caviomorph rodents arrived in South America. The subsequent vigorous diversification displaced some of South America's small marsupials and gave rise to, among others, capybaras, chinchillas, viscachas, and New World porcupines. This invasion most likely came from Africa. The crossing from West Africa to the northeast corner of Brazil was much shorter then, due to continental drift, and may have been aided by island hopping and westward oceanic currents. Crossings of the ocean were accomplished when at least one fertilized female accidentally floated over on driftwood or mangrove rafts. Over time, some caviomorph rodents evolved into larger forms that competed with some of the native South American ungulates, which may have contributed to the gradual loss of diversity suffered by the latter after the early Oligocene. Later primates followed, again from Africa in a fashion similar to that of the rodents. Primates capable of migrating had to be small. Like caviomorph rodents, South American monkeys are believed to be clade. However, although they would have had little effective competition, all extant New World monkeys appear to derive from a radiation that occurred long afterwards, in the early Miocene about 18 million years ago. Subsequent to this, monkeys apparently most closely related to Titus Island hop to Cuba, Hispaniola and Jamaica. Additionally, a find of 721-year-old apparent cebid teeth in Panama suggests that South American monkeys had dispersed across the seaway separating Central and South America by that early date. However, all extant Central American monkeys are believed to be descended from much later migrants, and there is as yet no evidence that these early Central American cebids established an extensive and long-lasting population, perhaps due to a shortage of suitable rainforest habitat at the time. Remarkably, the descendants of those few bedraggled waifs that crawled ashore onto South America from the rafts of African flotsam in the Eocene now constitute more than twice as many of the continent's species as the descendants of all the non-flying mammals previously resident on the continent. Many of South America's bats may have arrived from Africa during roughly the same period, possibly with the aid of intervening islands. Although by flying rather than floating, Noctilionoid bats ancestral to those in the neotropical families Pteridinidae, Mormupidae, Noctilionidae, Philostomodidae, and Thyropteridae thought to have reached South America from Africa in the Eocene, possibly via Antarctica. Similarly, mollicid bats may have reached South America from Africa in as many as 5 dispersals, starting in the Eocene. Imbaloneurid bats may have also reached South America from Africa about 30 ma ago, based on molecular evidence. Vespertilionid bats may have arrived in 5 dispersals from North America and 1 from Africa. Natilid bats are thought to have arrived during the Pliocene from North America via the Caribbean. Tortoises also arrived in South America in the Oligocene. It was long thought that they had come from North America, but a recent comparative genetic analysis concludes that the South American genus Chelonoides is actually most closely related to African hingeback tortoises. Tortoises are aided in oceanic dispersal by their ability to float with the heads up and to survive up to 6 months without food or water. South American tortoises then went on to colonize the West Indies and Galapagos Islands. A number of clades of American geckos seem to have rafted over from Africa during both the Paleogene and Neogene. Skinks of the related genera Mabuya and Trachylepes apparently dispersed across the Atlantic from Africa to South America and Fernando de Noronha, respectively, during the last 9 ma. Surprisingly, South America's burrowing amphisbaenians and blind snakes also appear to have rafted from Africa, as does the hoatzin, a weak flying bird of South American rainforests. The earliest traditionally recognized mammalian arrival from North America was a prosaunid that island-hopped from Central America before a land bridge formed, around 7.3 ma ago. This was South America's first eutherian carnivore. South American prosaunids then diversified into forms now extinct. However, all extant prosaunid genera appear to have originated in North America. It has been suggested that the first South American prosaunids may have contributed to the extinction of subbessid crocodilians by eating their eggs, but this view has not been universally viewed as plausible. The prosaunids were followed to South America by rafting, island-hopping hognose skunks and sigmodontan rodents, the Oryzomai tribe of sigmodontan rodents went on to colonize the Lesser Antilles up to Anguilla. One group has proposed that a number of large Nearctic herbivores actually reached South America as early as 9 to 10 ma ago in the late Miocene, via the Bordeaux pathway, and early land bridge that was probably incomplete and required some swimming, island hopping to traverse. The limited evidence for these early immigrants may reflect the presence primarily in the Amazon basin, an area where fewer fossils have been collected. These taxa are a proboscidean, peccaries, tapirs and a paleomericid, Suramorix. The paleomericids were probably unable to successfully colonize South America. Similarly, megalonychid and mylodontid ground sloths island hopped to North America by 9 ma ago. Megalonychids had colonized the Antilles previously, by the early Miocene. Terror birds may have also island hopped to North America as early as 5 ma ago. The Caribbean islands were populated primarily by species from South America. This was due to the prevailing direction of oceanic currents, rather than to a competition between North and South American forms. The Great American Biotic Interchange. The formation of the Isthmus of Panama led to the last and most conspicuous wave, the Great Interchange, around 3 ma ago. This included the immigration of North American ungulates, proboscids, carnivorans and a number of types of rodents into South America. The larger members of the reverse migration, besides ground sloths and terror birds, were glyptodons, pampeithers, capybaras and the note ungulate Mixotoxodon. In general, the initial net migration was symmetrical. Later on, however, the neotropic species proved far less successful than the Arctic. This misfortune happened both ways. Northwardly migrating animals often were not able to compete for resources as well as the North American species already occupying the same ecological niches. Those that did become established were not able to diversify much. Southwardly migrating Arctic species established themselves in larger numbers and diversified considerably more, and are thought to have caused the extinction of a large proportion of the South American fauna. Although terror birds were able to invade part of North America, the success was temporary. This lineage disappeared about 2 million years ago. The other large warm-blooded neotropic predators fared no better. Native South American ungulates also did poorly, with only several of the largest forms, Macrocenia and a few toxodontids, withstanding the northern onslaught. On the other hand, South America's small marsupials survived in large numbers, while the primitive-looking xenothrons proved to be surprisingly competitive and became the most successful invaders of North America. The African immigrants, the caviomorph rodents and platurine monkeys, were less impacted by the interchange than most of South America's old-timers, although the caviomorphs suffered a significant loss of diversity, including the elimination of the largest forms. With the exception of the North American porcupine and several extinct porcupines and capybaras, however, they did not migrate past Central America. The initial wave of southwardly migrating Arctic carnivorans rapidly occupied the South American predatory niches, displacing phorushassids and sparacidons, as well as eliminating Chaparmalania. It has been argued that canids probably played the major role in the boar hyenids' extinction. They are ecologically and morphologically more similar to them than other carnivorans, and are also the most diverse family of modern carnivorans on the continent. The paucity of early competition and plentiful prey seems to have allowed short-faced bears to rapidly evolve into the largest known bear or terrestrial mammalian carnivore species. Arctotherium angustidens is estimated to have weighed around 1,600 kg. Later species of Arctotherium exhibited a trend towards smaller size and a more omnivorous diet, probably due to increasing competition from later arriving or evolving carnivores. In contrast, Smilodon showed a trend toward increasing body size that culminated in the appearance of S. populator at up to nearly 500 kg, the most massive felid known, due in large part to the success of the xenothrons. One area of South American ecospace the Arctic invaders were unable to dominate was the niches for megaherbivores. Before 12,000 years ago, South America was home to about 25 species of herbivores weighing more than 1,000 kg, consisting of neotropic ground sloths, glyptodonts and toxodontids, as well as gumphothids and camelids of Arctic origin. Native South American forms made up about 75% of these species. However, none of these megaherbivores have survived. Armadillos, opossums and porcupines are present in North America today because of the Great American Interchange. Opossums and porcupines were among most successful northward migrants, reaching as far as Canada and Alaska, respectively. Most major groups of xenothrons were present in North America up until the end Pleistocene Quaternary Extinction event. Among the megafauna, ground sloths were notably successful emigrants, megalonic spreaders far north as the Yukon and Alaska, and might well have eventually reached Eurasia if the extinction event had not intervened. Generally speaking, however, the dispersal and subsequent explosive adaptive radiation of sigma-dontan rodents throughout South America was vastly more successful than any northward migration of South American mammals. Other examples of North American mammal groups that diversified conspicuously in South America include canids and cervids, both of which currently have 3 or 4 genera in North America, 2 or 3 in Central America, and 6 in South America. Although Canis currently ranges only as far south as Panama, South America still has more extant canid genera than any other continent. The effect of formation of the isthmus on the marine biota of the area was the inverse of its effect on terrestrial organisms, a development that has been termed the Great American Schism. The connection between the East Pacific Ocean and the Caribbean was severed, setting now separated populations on divergent evolutionary paths. Caribbean species also had to adapt to an environment of lower productivity after the inflow of nutrient-rich water of deep Pacific origin was blocked. Reasons for success or failure. The eventual triumph of the Arctic migrants was ultimately based on geography, which played into the hands of the northern invaders in 2 crucial respects. The first was a matter of climate. Any species that reached Panama from either direction obviously had to be able to tolerate moist tropical conditions. Those migrating southward would then be able to occupy much of South America without encountering climates that were markedly different. However, northward migrants would have encountered drier and/or cooler conditions by the time they reached the vicinity of the Trans-Mexican volcanic belt. The challenge this climatic asymmetry presented was particularly acute for neotropic species specialized for tropical rainforest environments, who had little prospect of penetrating beyond Central America. As a result, Central America currently has 41 mammal species of neotropical origin, compared to only 3 for temperate North America. However, species of South American origin still comprise only 21% of species from non-flying, non-marine mammal groups in Central America, while North American invaders constitute 49% of species from such groups in South America. Thus, climate alone cannot fully account for the greater success of species of Arctic origin during the interchange. The second and more important advantage geography gave to the northerners is related to the land area available for their ancestors to evolve in. During the Cenozoic, North America was periodically connected to Eurasia via Beringia, allowing multiple migrations back and forth to unite the faunas of the 2 continents. Eurasia was connected in turn to Africa, which contributed further to the species that made the way to North America. South America, on the other hand, was connected to Antarctica and Australia, 2 much smaller continents, only in the earliest part of the Cenozoic, and this land connection does not seem to have carried much traffic. This means that Northern Hemisphere species arose over a land area roughly 6 times greater than was available to South American species. North American species were thus products of a larger and more competitive arena, where evolution would have proceeded more rapidly. They tended to be more efficient and brainier, generally able to outrun and outwit the South American counterparts, who were products of an evolutionary backwater. These advantages can be clearly seen in the cases of ungulates and the predators, where South American forms were replaced wholesale by the invaders. The greater eventual success of South America's African immigrants compared to its native early Cenozoic mammal fauna is another example of this phenomenon. Since the former evolved over a greater land area, their ancestors ancestors migrated from Eurasia to Africa, two significantly larger continents, before finding the way to South America. Against this backdrop, the ability of South America's xenothrons to compete effectively against the northerners represents a special case. The explanation for the xenothrons' success lies in part in their idiosyncratic approach to defending against predation, based on possession of body armor and/or formidable claws. The xenothrons did not need to be fleet-footed or quick-witted to survive. Such a strategy may have been forced on them by the low metabolic rate. Their low metabolic rate may in turn have been advantageous in allowing them to subsist on less abundant and/or less nutritious food sources. Unfortunately, the defensive adaptations of the large xenothrons would have been useless against humans armed with spears and other projectiles. Late Pleistocene extinctions. At the end of the Pleistocene epoch, about 12,000 years ago, three dramatic developments occurred in the Americas at roughly the same time. Paleo-Indians invaded and occupied the New World. The last glacial period came to an end, and a large fraction of the megafauna of both North and South America went extinct. This wave of extinction swept off the face of the Earth many of the successful participants of the Great American Interchange, as well as other species that had not migrated. All the pampeides, glyptodons, ground sloths, equids, proboscids, dire wolves, lions and smilodon species of both continents disappeared. The last of the South and Central American note ungulates and litopterns died out, as well as North America's giant beavers, dholes, native cheetahs, scimitar cats, and many of its antilochopod, bovid, cervid, tapirid and tailshood ungulates. Some groups disappeared over most or all of their original range but survived in their adopted homes, e.g. South American tapirs, camelids and Tremarctine bears. Others, such as capybaras, survived in their original range but died out in areas they had migrated to. Notably, this extinction pulse eliminated all neotropic migrants to North America larger than about 15 kilograms, and all native South American mammals larger than about 65 kilograms. In contrast, the largest surviving native North American mammal, the wood bison, can exceed 900 kilograms, and the largest surviving Arctic migrant to South America, Baird's tapir, can reach 400 kilograms. The near simultaneity of the megafaunal extinctions with the glacial retreat and peopling of the Americas has led to proposals that both climate change and human hunting played a role. Although the subject is contentious, a number of considerations suggest that human activities were pivotal. The extinctions did not occur selectively in the climatic zones that would have been most affected by the warming trend, and there is no plausible general climate-based megafauna killing mechanism that could explain the continent-wide extinctions. The climate change took place worldwide, but had little effect on the megafauna in areas like Africa and southern Asia, where megafaunal species had co-evolved with humans. Numerous very similar glacial retreats had occurred previously within the Ice Age of the last several miles without ever producing comparable waves of extinction in the Americas or anywhere else. Similar megafaunal extinctions have occurred on other recently populated land masses at different times that correspond closely to the first arrival of humans at each location. These extinction pulses invariably swept rapidly over the full extent of a contiguous landmass, regardless of whether it was an island or a hemisphere-spanning set of connected continents. This was true despite the fact that all the larger land masses involved contained multiple climatic zones that would have been affected differently. by any climate changes ongoing at the time. However, on sizable islands far enough offshore from newly occupied territory to escape immediate human colonization, megafaunal species sometimes survived for many thousands of years after their related species became extinct on the mainland. Examples include giant kangaroos in Tasmania, giant chelonoides tortoises of the Galapagos Islands, giant Dipsocles tortoises of the Seychelles, giant Malaniad turtles on Lord Howe Island, New Caledonia and Vanuatu, ground sloths on the Antilles, Steller's sea cows off the Commander Islands and woolly mammoths on Wrangel Island and St. Paul Island. The glacial retreat may have played a primarily indirect role in the extinctions in the Americas by simply facilitating the movement of humans southeastward from Beringia down to North America. The reason that a number of groups went extinct in North America but lived on in South America appears to be that the dense rainforest of the Amazon basin and the high peaks of the Andes provided environments that afforded a degree of protection from human predation.